Hey all, it's Starzy, and today we are going to be going through some 2021 book releases that I'm particularly interested in, that are on my radar. So a few things to get out of the way first. First of all, I'm not going to be giving exact dates for all of these, only just the general month they're expected, mostly because book dates vary so much country to country, and especially since I'm in Australia, majority of the dates that I saw on Goodreads when I looked up the books at Australian booksellers, they were often completely different. So I'm not going to worry about the dates, but usually they were within the same month. Although there's also the fact that some books don't formally seem to come to Australia at all, so there's also that. In saying that, that also means that even though I'm interested in all of these books, it doesn't necessarily mean I am definitely going to read them this year, because of the fact of what books I actually get access to without specially ordering them, and especially since a lot of my reading, most of my reading is through the library at this point too. With all that out of the way, let's just get into some of these books, and I am going to be starting from January, which means some of these books have already come out since it is February now. My cat's on the windowsill just staring at me. Please don't jump down and knock everything over. So the book that came out in January was Across the Greengrass Fields by Shauna Maguire, which is the most recent book. I think it's up to the 6th book in the Wayward Children series, which is a series that follows a bunch of children who go to different worlds, and then when they come back, they're often stuck here, and so a school has been set up to help them kind of deal with that. And then every second book's also in kind of one of these worlds and the children's stories. So this is one of the ones that is set in a different world, I believe, and I think it has stuff, it's to do with horses and like horse-like creatures, like unicorns and stuff. So yeah, I listened to all of the previous books of this series last year and loved them, so I definitely do want to listen to this at some point this year. Alright, then there's a few books from February, a lot of which are already out. So first of all, A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J Maas. This like just came out this week, but again, I don't have my hands on it, mostly because those covers are so horrible. I do not want to own them physically, and also I've only owned one of those books physically anyway. Most of them I always bought ebooks for. But this is the most recent book connected to the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, but following different characters, which is her fantasy series that I'm sure will be pretty heavy on the romance. And yeah. At the moment, for some reason here in Australia at least, the ebook is more expensive than the physical books. So hopefully that changes at some point, or I might have to go and hold at my library for it. There's also A Dark and Hollow Star by Ashley Shuttleworth. This one is not out yet, I believe. This is a YA fantasy, which I was immediately drawn to when I first saw the cover sometime last year, because that cover is stunning, but I believe it's like urban fantasy with fae or something. So I'm intrigued, because I'm intrigued. Another book that has already come out was What Big Teeth by Rose Sabo. I can't read my own writing here. I did check some of the reviews for this and they seem to be pretty mixed, but I'm still interested in it. Again, I was immediately drawn to the cover, but also this is a YA horror, which I read a few YA horror thrillers last year and definitely want to read more of those now. So I'm still intrigued, and I think this has to do with kind of a weird dark family or something. And then the last book, which is weird, like I've already started reading it because I got the ebook from my library, but the weird thing is that Australian booksellers, like it hasn't formally been released here yet. The release date for the physical copies is later. Regardless, A Tangle of Spells by Michelle Harrison, which is the 3rd book in a children's fantasy series. I read A Sprinkle of Sorcery, the 2nd one last year, and really enjoyed it, so I was keen on this one. And they are a series, it's a series that follows these 3 sisters, and there's often a bit of magic and stuff going on, and they also often have kind of creepy elements to them. Like the 2nd one was particularly had a lot of kind of ghosts and witch vibes, and now this one seems to be in like this little town that has kind of some weird stuff going on, and they're in like this creepy old house. So yeah, definitely interested to keep reading that. Then in March, we have The Conductors by Nicole Glover. This is something I actually have an arc of already, so I have read the first couple of chapters. I definitely want to read it, ideally, I do want to read it before the release, or by March. It's a historical fantasy. It's set in, like, times of, like, what is it, like the Underground Railroad? But it's a adult historical fantasy. I knew, like, nothing about it going into it. Really, I think there's some kind of murder mystery elements to it or something. I don't really know what's going on yet, but there seem to be, there's definitely magic that, like, seems to be inherent in essentially the black people in the world, and so that kind of ties in to a lot of the racial stuff as well. I'm not very far into it, but I was intrigued from the moment I saw it. It's on my list. Then in April, Near the Bone by Christina Henry. So Christina Henry is another author that I read 2 books from last year and enjoyed both of them and enjoyed her writing style. She tends to write horrors, so this is a horror. I don't really know anything about it. Beyond that, I think it has to do with, the synopsis seemed to imply something to do with a man that you get angry, and maybe there's like a creature involved or something. I don't really know, but I enjoyed her other 2 books enough to be intrigued by her most recent release, so. Then the next one I have in May is Illusionary by Zoraida Cordova. I just read Incendiary. I'm looking over there because I still have my library books over there. I just read Incendiary, which is the first book in this YA fantasy series, and really enjoyed it, so I was kind of disappointed the second book isn't out already, so I can already kind of grab onto it. But it's a YA fantasy to do with rebellion, really. There's a rebellion going on, and there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with the magic. Like, our protagonist has memory magic where she can, like, steal people's memories, but then there's also kind of this exploration of mental health in terms of, like, suppression of trauma, because she seems to have suppressed a lot of her own memories. So I really enjoyed that book, and so I really want to read the sequel, which is supposed to be coming out in May. Then I have some books that are coming out in July. So Survive the Night by Riley Sager. I've read the first 3 Riley Sager books and enjoyed them enough that I'm interested in trying out his other works. I haven't read Home Before Dark yet because, again, it's one of those books that doesn't seem to I don't know if the paperbacks come out yet, and we often don't get the big hardbacks here, or if we do, they're like $50 to $60. So I haven't read that yet. But yeah, I enjoyed his other thrillers enough to be interested in his new release, and I think this one has something to do with the protagonist is like a movie geek or something. I definitely read the synopsis, but I don't remember it. I've read synopses for most of these. I just don't remember them, and I actually tend to like not going, I often like going into books not knowing too much about them, because sometimes I'm really pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoy it. So that's all I know. It's a new thriller by Riley Sager. The other thing I tend to like about Riley Sager's books is, even though they're categorized as thrillers, they tend to feel very much like horror movies. This Poison Heart by Kaylin Barron. Now, her first book, Cinderella's Dead, was an anticipated book for me from last year, and I still haven't read it, and there's been really mixed reviews. They were really kind of, a lot of the reviews I saw were saying it was kind of just okay, but I'm still really interested in this book as well. One, the covers for them are just stunning, but also this one is has something to do with, like, mythology and plants or something. I'm intrigued. Another YA fantasy. I'm still, even though everyone kind of said, oh, the first one was just okay, I'm still interested in reading it because I love fairy tale retellings, so. The River Has Teeth by Erica Waters. I don't remember anything about this book, but the reason I'm interested in it, I think it's another YA horror type book, because the reason I'm interested in it is because I read Ghostwood Song by Erica Waters last year and really enjoyed that, so I'm interested in the next one. I don't know whether there's a queer element as well, like Ghostwood Song had, possibly. Don't really know anything about it, but I'm interested. Then The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix is also coming out. This is a horror novel to do with a group of final girls, which if you don't know the concept of final girls, particularly in like horror movies, is that one girl who survives at the end even though everyone else has been killed off. That's your final girl. So yeah, it has something to do with a group of final girls coming together. The only Grady Hendrix book I've read is Horror Store, but I did really enjoy that. So I do want to get to his other works, including this recent one. Sounds interesting to me because again, it harkens to a lot of horror movies, and I love horror movies. So, and in August we have The Heart Principle by Helen Hong. This is the third book from her in this romance series where, you know, it's a series of companion novels essentially. I have no idea who this one is following, but I enjoyed the other two romances, so I'm sure it will be cute and fun just as the others were, so I definitely am looking forward to reading that. All's Well by Mona Awad. So Bunny was one of my favourite books I read last year, and the author has another book coming out this year, which again I'm pretty sure is another horror type book, and this one has to do with Shakespeare. I'm intrigued. I'm hoping that I enjoy it as much as The Witness of Bunny. I don't know. Again, I don't know much about it beyond that, but I'm here for it. And then the last book that I have on here was a book that I was anticipating in 2020, but it was pushed back. And that's Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff. I really enjoyed the Nevernight series, and I've always really enjoyed vampire media. A lot of my favourite media, especially when I was a teenager, had to do with vampires, so I'm very excited that vampires are coming back, and I'm definitely intrigued by this. I'm hoping wow, speaking. I have high hopes. I've seen some big fantasy authors have been getting early copies and have had some positive things to say about it too, so high hopes for that. High hopes for that. Definitely keen on a resurgence of bloody vampires. I'm definitely here for that. So that is all the books that I had written down for my anticipated releases of 2021. Let me know if any of these are on your radar or whether you are going to keep an eye on them now. And also let me know what are some of your most anticipated releases for 2021. I'm not very good at keeping up with new releases, so there's probably a lot of stuff that I just haven't noticed. In some of these cases, when there were books that I really enjoyed last year, I just looked up the author to see if they were coming out with anything else, and that's how some of these got on my list in the first place. And then also series that I had already read and enjoyed. But yeah, let me know if there's anything you think I'm missing that I would really enjoy. Especially, you know, fantasy and horror is my favourite stuff, but also the occasional cute romance. I do enjoy the romance genre, and I feel like I don't read enough of it because I do also have a lot of problems with the romance genre, especially some of the men in it. But that's a different discussion we don't need to have. But yeah, I love fantasy and horror, but I do love reading kind of across all genres and trying new things. So if there's anything that you know is coming out in 2021 that I should keep an eye on, let me know. Let's talk books in the comments. And yeah, stay safe, stay educated, and Starzy out.